Thank you. Well, as a soldier, but a historian by academic enthusiasm, I think key things for historians are know your facts, understand context, and be empathetic. And so I'd just like to say, to just kick off with the fact that from 450 AD, when the Roman legions left Britain, we did not build a house for pleasure in this country for 1,000 years. And only after about 1,000 years did the combination of security, stability, prosperity, and technological advance begin the domination of the West. I put the words in inverted commas. None of this is God-given. None of that dominance was God-given. None of it was anyone's by right. It was fought for and defended by generation after generation against ferocious external challenge and significant bloody internal conflicts. The West has been defined by geography, by ethnicity, by history and religion, and I would say from the 16th century, the last 500 years, by the concept of progress. Religion, society, culture, learning, agriculture, industry, and technology. And this has led to the westernization of the world. It is difficult to think of a single significant material advance in the modern world that has not come from the West. And additional to that, the West has exported, globalized all the freedoms that we assume define the West. All those freedoms that we believed we were in the vanguard of, which are now being corroded from within. And it's worth remembering Teddy Roosevelt's great cry, 1910, it's not the critic who counts, or whether doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, but who does actually strive to do the deeds. He at least fails while daring greatly, so his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who never know victory nor defeat. Now, civilizations, societies, and empires are also in the arena, and their survival depends on statesman-like leadership, the prudent use of resources, the willingness of citizens to make sacrifices, and the preparedness of a military to fight and die for an idea and a cause. Those in the arena, including our ancestors, have the right to be judged in the context of their times and by the values and standards of their age, what Chesterton called the democracy of the dead. And the critics of the West, or the British Empire, dare I say, which seems fashionable at the moment, need to be confronted and challenged with the question, compared to what? Frankly, compared to what? None of us stand alone in a vacuum as a civilization or an individual. The collapse of the Soviet Union led to Francis Fukuyama's book, The End of History, rather naively, and also Samuel Huntington's Clash of Civilization. And he identified that the West may have had a temporary dominance, but unless you're prepared to defend it, predators are all around you. However, to acknowledge Huntington's thesis meant that the West was going to have to spend money on expensive defense capabilities, and possibly even having to expend intellectual firepower in defending the West. And the championing of the West, with all its flaws, failures, crimes, foul-ups, and admit that it had been the greatest vehicle of human freedom, increased health or wealth creation in human history. However, neither Francis Fukuyama nor Samuel Huntington predicted the scale and pace of the eternal corrosion of the ideal of the West by those who had been the beneficiary of Western dominance, but were devoid of the understanding of history and context, obsessed with its flaws and failures, but susceptible to manipulation. Through a combination of complacency, intellectual indolence, a self-deprecation bordering on self-loathing, lack of convincing leadership, lack of professional competence, we now lack, to take Tim's words, a compelling narrative that confidently sets out the extraordinary achievements of the West, while also acknowledging the immediacy and lethality of the range of threats and challenges we face. We have not only failed to invest in our armed forces, but we have progressively denigrated the values, standards, and motivations of those we rely upon to protect us. We would all deprecate that expression, toxic masculinity. But for many people, that phrase is shorthand for all masculinity is toxic. Take that attitude to the Ukrainian front line and see how far it gets you. Let's recall Orwell's admonition. People sleep peacefully in their beds at night only because rough men stand ready to do violence on their behalf. Military spending has been looked on as an unwelcome discretionary expenditure, not what it really is, prudent investment. And Churchill, that cartoon demon of the left, wrote with regard to the military, the army is not like some limited liability company to be restricted, remodeled, liquidated, and refloated from week to week. It is not an inanimate thing, it is a living thing. Sufficiently disturbed, it will wither, dwindle, almost die. When it comes to the last serious condition, it is only revived by lots of time and lots of money. And let us be clear, most European militaries have now reached that point. What we have in the West is precious to us, we who are fortunate enough to live here in this time, and I believe its achievements and its potential achievements are vital to the well-being of all humanity. Flawed the West may be, but compared to what? The Mughals, the Mongols, the Safavids, the Ottomans, the Chinese empires, Soviet Union, Communist Russia, Islamist death cults? The human condition is sadly one of equality, inequality, suffering, and disadvantage, but the dominance of the West in the last 500 years has done more to create the conditions, legal, ethical, and technological, to address these shortfalls than any previous dominant culture or any likely alternative. Very lastly, let us remember that man, society, civilization, we are in the arena. The West is now very firmly in the arena. We have quite enough on our hands fighting enemies and opponents, set on our physical downfall and destruction, and all the ideas of freedom and progress that define the West without the insidious and corrosive influence of Roosevelt's timid and cold souls. Thank you.
Thank you very much.